It's a busy Tuesday morning here on the Desmond Johnson Show. Glad you guys could join us on your lunch break here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio, or on any of our X channels. David Glenn stopping by his bi-weekly jaunt through the Desmond Johnson Show, co-hosting with me, and I'm glad I got him today because breaking news out of Chapel Hill regarding UNC football. Plus, we'll look at Carolina's historic comeback against Dayton last night, and Duke taking on number 1 Kansas tonight, too. We'll preview both of those games. It's the Desmond Johnson Show. Let's go ahead and go.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city needs that. I've been number 1, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whacked. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And again, welcome into the Desmond Johnson Show, brought to you by Emergency Responders Credit Union in Winston-Salem. If you are an emergency responder in the Triad area looking for financial services, Emergency Responders Credit Union is for you. Find their location in Winston-Salem off of Link Road. They can help you with all your financial needs. Desmond Johnson in the house with David Glenn from the North Carolina Sports Network. And a couple things happened over the weekend that we were going to talk about, but breaking news about an hour or so ago out of Chapel Hill, the University of North Carolina announces that football head coach Mack Brown will not be returning next season. One day after Brown declared his intentions to return to the Tar Heels, athletic director Bubba Cunningham informed Coach Brown of his decision on Tuesday. Coach Brown is 73 years old. He will coach in the regular season finale against NC State this Saturday, but a decision has not been made about whether or not he will coach the Tar Heels in their bowl game. The Heels are bowl eligible. They are currently 6-5. DG, I'll just kick it off here with you. You were telling me off camera that you were there for Mack Brown's first press conference way back in the late 80s. Thoughts on Mack Brown not returning to Carolina? Just initial thoughts when you first heard this, because this has kind of been out in the air for a couple of weeks now, really ever since they allowed James Madison to drop 70 on him. Way back in September. It's kind of been floating out there. So your thoughts on this when you heard it? Were you surprised? Were you not surprised? What do you think what happens next?
I can't say I was surprised, Des, and it's always good to be with you. On the one hand, this is a Hall of Fame coach, right? This is a guy who built Carolina into a national top 10 program for one of the only times in the history of Carolina football back in the 1990s. And whereas he didn't get them quite to that level here in this second tenure in Chapel Hill, he did get them to 6 straight bowl invitations, which is at least a step towards stability and something better than what they had at the end of that Larry Fedora era. But on the other hand, the guy will turn 74 years old next summer. I mean, that is, I believe he's currently the oldest head coach in FBS football.
I think he is.
He's certainly on the short list, right? We've seen Jim Boeheim at Syracuse and Mike Krzyzewski at Duke and Roy Williams at Carolina in men's basketball, of course, all choose to retire in their 70s. So you can't call it a surprise when it's in somebody's 70s. But one other twist is, as you mentioned earlier, Mack Brown himself kind of started this ball rolling, the back and forth debate when they gave up the 70 burger to James Madison at Kenan Stadium. He was the guy who publicly said to his own players, hey, if I'm not the guy, I'm going to step away. I didn't have you prepared today.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
You know, since then, we've had these public comments where, Des, it was 24 hours ago that Mack Brown publicly said, my intention is to be back at Carolina next year. That was less than 24 hours ago. So usually when a 73-year-old coach makes that public statement, if the wheels turning in the administration did not agree with that, there was going to be some hard conversations behind closed doors. Clearly there were. I'd be shocked if UNCAD Bubba Cunningham did not give Mack Brown the option of gracefully retiring and you could have described it as this mutual decision where Mack Brown might transition into another position in the athletic department and everybody lives happily ever after. Obviously, Mack was not interested in that road, so they fired him. He'll coach against the Wolfpack, as you said. We'll see if he coaches the bowl game. But remember, the transfer portal is not far away. Carolina does have a couple of really good high school recruits, including one in your backyard. But remember, the Heels have not gotten a large number of the best in-state prospects the way Mack Brown used to do all the time. And it's fair to wonder if a guy who's about to turn 74 years old prior to next season, if recruits and their families are just saying, how can I really believe that guy's going to be there for the next 3, 4, or 5 years? And that's why the uncertainty over any head coach can actually be a killer for a program. And it's usually better to be crystal clear. Either the guy's coming back or the guy's not, because that hovering doubt absolutely destroys recruiting, and it takes a lot of the zest out of the fan base a lot of times as well.
And the class that's coming in this upcoming year has been kind of put together for the past couple of years. So to your point, I would imagine those recruits, they all knew that Mack Brown was 72, 73 at the time as well. So I'm sure that was in the back of their head when they made those decisions. But with Mack Brown, he's gone a combined 113, 78, and 1 in 2 stints at Carolina. Won a national championship with Texas after the first Carolina tenure. Returned to Carolina in 2019. Took him to an ACC championship game appearance in 2022. He's won more games than any football coach in Carolina history. He ranks 8th all time in FBS coaches with 288 wins, and he's the only coach with 100+ wins at multiple FBS schools. He's got 113 in North Carolina and 158 at Texas. And I was thinking about it too. When he left Texas, it was kind of similar where he wasn't going to step down. Like Mack Brown doesn't really step down from anything. You kind of got to lead him out the door. And that was kind of the narrative here where people were like, well, he's not going to retire from Carolina. He's basically saying he wants to stay. He wants to remain. They're going to have to push him out, basically. And that's kind of what's happened here where Bubba's decided to go in a different direction. Now, what you were saying before with recruits, yes, as everybody knows, Tobacco Road, we run the East Forsyth Sports Network here in North Carolina. East Forsyth starting senior quarterback Bryce Baker led the state in passing yards this year as a senior. He is committed to North Carolina. As far as I'm aware at this moment of this taping, he's a 4-star quarterback coming in there who had the potential to potentially start as a freshman, to be honest, coming in there. He's that good. I don't know. I haven't heard anything whatsoever regarding him flipping or anything like that or remaining. From everything I've seen and heard, they've been pretty committed to the program. Now, I do know they've had assistant coaches come out to watch Bryce play throughout this season. So maybe there's some sort of succession plan in place or something already that maybe the public's not privy to. Maybe they bring up an assistant coach or whatever it may be in order to keep some of the recruits they have in this class right now. I could see that happening. But again, to your point, DG, the way college sports are today, it's kind of wild, wild west. Like you kind of go wherever you want, if somebody wants you. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen regarding that. Do you think it's weird that they're going to let him coach the regular season finale, but they haven't made a decision on whether or not he's going to coach the bowl game or not?
No, I think that goes back to the emotions of the moment where there's no way they were not going to let Mack Brown coach this finale against NC State. He said way back in August that on his list of most important goals was ending what is right now a 3-game winning streak by the Wolfpack over the Tar Heels. He said back in August he wanted to get out of that late season slide habit that, remember, they had started so well and they had these beautiful records in early November the last couple of years, and then they just faded down the stretch. So maybe they'll avoid that. I mean, they did get crushed by Boston College last week, but they had a 3-game winning streak prior to that. So maybe Mack Brown just wanted an opportunity to avoid the late season slide, get that win against the Wolfpack to reverse that recent theme where Dave Doran has had the Tar Heels number lately. And then they'll just make the bowl decision a little bit later. We know how bowls are nowadays. NFL prospects opt out all the time. Injured players are unavailable. It is the wild, wild west. So they'll tackle that at some point down the road. Everything's focused on what is an important matchup for both of these schools, right? A lot of Wolfpack fans are complaining about Dave Doran in year 12 just as we now have resolution on the Carolina side with a lot of Tar Heel fans complaining about Mack Brown Part 2. I don't think Dave Doran's going to get fired, by the way. He has a $15 million buyout, and Max was much smaller than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is about Tar Heels Wolfpack for the next handful of days. And then Carolina has Bubba Cunningham knew this day was coming. I'd be stunned if North Carolina's athletic director did not only have that proverbial short list in his back pocket of targets, but I'd be shocked if he didn't also have a good idea, financially speaking, which next candidates are gettable financially, and what he wants in this next head coach at Carolina football, because name, image, likeness money is changing. The house settlement is going to cost these schools $20 million per year in new NIL money. You need not only a good football coach, you need a fundraiser, you need a staff builder, you need a recruiter, as always.
NIL director.
And since Max 73 years old, obviously Bubba Cunningham knew if the decision wasn't coming this winter, it was going to be next winter. So I'm sure he's well prepared.
And that's what I'm thinking too with these recruits. Again, they knew he was 71, 72, 73 when he first started talking to them. And I'm sure that question came up from parents, how long are you going to be there? That kind of thing. So I'm sure that thought has been there, and there's been some sort of mentality regarding what would happen when this day did eventually come. Again, it's not much of a surprise based off of the way the Tar Heels played this particular season, the ebbs and flows of it, but maybe a surprise in terms of where it happens, the week right before you play your arch rival NC State to end the regular season and you're bowl eligible. So maybe they're doing it we've seen it a lot really, where teams are doing it to kind of get ahead so they can kind of get out there and go after the candidates that maybe they already had in mind. So we'll see about that. Moving over to the basketball side of it, staying with the Tar Heels. I stayed up late. Of course, the Heels are in Hawaii, and they're making my life miserable because their start times are super late. It's like a 6-7 hour difference or something like that. Friday night, I watched them play Hawaii. It was a 12:30 a.m. tip-off. Watched that full game after I did my high school game. Last night, I watched them play Dayton at 11. Well, it was 11:45 tip-off because it was delayed. So they didn't finish till close to 2. I'm glad I stayed up for it because I almost gave up on them. They were down. They were down at the half, 51-33. They got down by as much as 21 points in the second half. And then they just started to outrun the Flyers. RJ Davis had 30 points. Seth Trimble had 27. 12th ranked Carolina comes back from a 21-point deficit. They won 92-90 over Dayton last night to advance. They'll take on 4th ranked Auburn tonight. And it's another late tip-off. It's 11 o'clock this evening. Thoughts on the Tar Heels and their three-headed guard monster right now with RJ Davis, Seth Trimble, and Elliot Cadeau, who got in some foul trouble last night. But Seth Trimble, I've been so impressed with the leap in his game from last year to this year. And for those that don't know, Seth was trying to transfer out. He actually entered the portal to the urging of Hubert Davis, like, go out there, see what's out there. And it's really rare to see a player go in the portal and then come back home to where he was trying to leave, and then to have the season that he's having to start off here. Your thoughts on what you're seeing from the Heels, because it's kind of a reversal of what we normally see from Carolina. They're usually an inside-out kind of team. They're going to beat you on the glass. This team might not beat you on the glass on any given night, but that guard, that three-headed monster at guard, is something different that we haven't really seen really ever at Carolina.
Yeah, your point is well taken. Going back decades, what has Carolina been known for, maybe above all else besides, Michael Jordan or something? It's the inside-outside combination where Dean Smith, Roy Williams, Bill Guthridge, etc., always had a low post scoring option, sometimes two, going all the way back to Worthy and Perkins when they won the national title with Michael Jordan back in 1982. I mean, this is a multi-generational theme behind Carolina basketball, and you're absolutely right. It's not the way this team is built. The good news for Carolina is they have already proven, and for those who don't know, Dayton is a really good basketball team.
They are.
The Tar Heels just beat. Dayton's going to be in the NCAA tournament and one of the best teams in their league. So to come back from an 18-point deficit at halftime and just blow the doors off offensively in the second half to win 92-90, it took a great backcourt. And I think another positive for the Tar Heels is that Elliot Cadeau, who's been fantastic this year, He's one of the best assist men in the nation. He has improved his outside shot. He did not have a great game against Dayton, but Seth Trimble did with 27 points and 10 rebounds, and RJ Davis did with 30 points and 7 rebounds and 5 assists, and RJ hit 4 out of his 10 3-pointers. So on any given night, if 2 of those 3 guards are great and 1 is just good, the Tar Heels are going to beat most of the competition out there. And of course, their only loss to this point is to the number 1 ranked Kansas Jayhawks at Allen Fieldhouse, where almost everybody would lose as well.
They almost won that. They came storming back in that game.
You got it. And there are fair questions. I'm not saying the Tar Heels are the number 1 team in the country. I am saying the Tar Heels, along with Duke, are the 2 best teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference, which has a lot of questions beyond those 2. But Duke fans and Carolina fans, despite both teams losing 1 game, 2 quality opponents, they should feel overwhelmingly good about the way this season has started. And in the Tar Heels case, you're right. It starts with that backcourt, and they'll try to answer the front court questions in the coming weeks and months.
Carolina taking on 4th-ranked Auburn tonight in Tuesday's semifinal. It's on ESPN at 11 o'clock. Before that, though, we get a treat. Duke taking on number 1 Kansas at 9 o'clock. So you get Duke, Kansas at 9. You get Carolina, Auburn at 11. What more could you ask for? It's Feast Week on ESPN. Before we get to that Duke, Kansas quick preview, if someone forced you to choose right now, DG, who's the 3rd best team in the ACC, what's the first name that comes to mind? I'm sitting there looking at the conference standings right now. Of course, they haven't had any conference games yet, but Stanford's undefeated. They're 6-0. NC State's undefeated. They're 5-0. Florida State, Pitt, Wake, they're all 6-1, but have flaws. Boston College, Cal, Clemson are all 5-1. Then you get Duke and Carolina at 4-1. Of course, Duke and Carolina are clearly the cream of the crop here, but who would you pick? Who would you bet on to finish 3rd if you had to choose it right now, November 26th of 2024?
Yeah, my short answer is the Pitt Panthers of Jeff Capel. I'm not counting out NC State or Stanford. Credit to them for being undefeated at this point. But I haven't seen the Wolfpack or the Cardinal play anybody of any caliber yet. So I'm kind of reserving judgment on those 2. Most of these other teams we have seen against quality competition. I do think Clemson's going to be a quality team under Brad Brownell and a probable NCAA tournament team. But the Pitt Panthers, for those who don't remember them from last year, they lost their freshman point guard, Bub Carrington, to the NBA. He left after only 1 year. But their other freshman point guard named Jalen Lowe is back, and I think he has a chance to be an all-ACC player. And around Jalen Lowe, they just have a bunch of dogs. And I mean dogs in the complimentary sense. The transfer Ishmael Leggett is a hard-working dude. Damian Dunn is a grab-a-loose ball, fight-you-to-the-death transfer that's new to the Panthers. Florida State's big man, Cameron Corhen, is now the starting big man for Pitt. The Diaz-Graham brothers, the 7-footers, they're still there. Zach Austin's another transfer. They have a freshman guard named Brandon Cummings at Pitt. That arsenal to go with what I think is really good coaching for under Jeff Capel. I think the Panthers and Clemson could end up in those 3 to 4 slots, although I'm interested to see whether both State and Wake can end up in that mix at some point. The Wolfpack, as you said, still undefeated. The Demon Deacons have a really nice win against Michigan, but also a really disappointing loss to Xavier. So they're not where they hoped they would be at Wake right now, because they really need this to be the kick the door down year under Coach Steve Forbes, who's had some good teams, but hasn't yet taken the Demon Deacons to the NCAA tournament. And we know at some point you have to do that to keep your job.
Yeah, so I'm keeping an eye on State. The way the portals made it, it's hard for me because as a kid, I grew in ACC country as a kid. You remember the Jefferson Pilot quadruple header Saturdays or whatever, and it was like everybody had one dude that everybody knew. Like, so like it would be Bryant Stith in Virginia against J.R. Reed in Carolina or whatever it was. Kenny Anderson in Georgia Tech taking on whoever in Clemson, and it's like you kind of knew the rosters, and it's harder for me now, especially when you add in Cal and SMU to the ACC, and it's like all the moving parts and players getting moved around. And at least with Carolina, it feels like they kind of keep a core of guys. It's not like a mass exodus every year. We're having to relearn the roster. There's guys that are familiar to you. Duke this year, there's a couple of guys that were there from last year, but again, they brought in like 7 freshmen.
Yeah.
They actually used the portal this year. So you're kind of looking at a new team, and I haven't had a chance to watch a full Duke game yet this season. I've caught them in bits and pieces. I caught some of the Arizona game earlier, and I'm gonna try to catch some of this Duke game tonight, taking on number 1 ranked Kansas in Las Vegas. So it's a neutral site game. It's tonight at 9:00. The Jayhawks are 5-0 in non-conference games this year. They're 5th in college basketball with 44 points in the paint. Hunter Dickerson averaging 13 points of those a game. Dickinson's actually scoring 17.8 points per game, 10 rebounds, and close to 2 assists. Cooper Flagg, similar numbers, 17.8 points, 9 rebounds, 3.8 assists. Outside of Cooper Flagg, who does Duke need to show up tonight in order to pull off the upset and defeat the Jayhawks, who are looking as good as advertised?
And by the way, when I created the ACC Sports Journal back in 1994, remember there were only 9 ACC schools at the time.
Yeah.
To your earlier point, I became convinced that most of the subscribers to our magazine and later our website would know a handful of players, sometimes even the full starting lineup in men's basketball for not only their favorite team, but for the other 8 teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
That is essentially impossible today.
Impossible. Yeah.
Even those of us who are paid to do this, I'm not sure I could go, all 5 starters at all 18 schools, and this is what I do for a living. Now, around here, we know the personnel well. And to answer your question, Con Knippel, the other freshman, has to be really good tonight. It's weird that Duke's 2 best players are freshmen, given that Tyrese Proctor is back, Caleb Foster is back, but that's the reality. Cooper Flagg as a forward, Con Knippel as a wingman. They're the Blue Devils' 2 best players. Common Maluach, the big fella, is also a future NBA guy. But they need the ultimate need in this big matchup is that the backcourt of Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor needs to play well. Foster's not a pure point guard. Proctor has kind of had point guard duties taken away from him, and he's playing more on the wing. That's a pretty big adjustment for those young guards. And I think that's where it's less predictable what John Shire is going to get, especially against the best competition that this year's schedule has to offer.
I'm looking around because UConn got upset yesterday in overtime by Memphis in the Maui. Shout out to Penny Hardaway and the Memphis Tigers. And I'm just trying to look to see, is Kansas truly the number 1 team in the country, or is there someone else out there? Because I would have said UConn going into it, but then them losing yesterday made me think, well, maybe it actually is Kansas, because they've actually played a pretty tough schedule up to this point.
Auburn's really good. Auburn, Tennessee is really good.
Tennessee,
Gonzaga.
Of course, you got their
really
Duke and Carolina in there, but and they're
Houston's really good.
Houston's
There's
good.
a bunch.
Yeah, so I like the variety. It's out there right now, and just looking at who Kansas has taken on so far, taking on Carolina at Allen Fieldhouse early, game 2 of the season, and then they beat Michigan State also 77-69, and then they'll have this against Duke. They got 21st ranked Creighton December the 4th, and then they hit a slate where actually they play NC State December 14th. They actually welcome NC State into Allen Fieldhouse, so they'll get a dose of that. Just kind of look at their schedule. They do have, they're in the Big 12. They've got Cincinnati in January. They've got 5th ranked Iowa State in January. Baylor's ranked. They've got Iowa State twice, matter of fact. And they've got Arizona March the 8th. It's a late non-conference game. They've got Houston too on March the 3rd at Houston. So you got, Houston's part of the Big 12 now. So they got them twice. So so Kansas is up there. We'll see how they do. The Big 12 is loaded in terms of basketball talent. Makes me feel like old school ACC, where I don't think you can sit here and say that the ACC is the best basketball conference in the land anymore, because that's kind of what we cling to, especially when we get to March, where the ACC will get like 4 or 5 bids, and then the SEC will get like 12 or something, and then like 8 of them are gone after the first weekend, and the ACC sends like 4 teams to the Sweet 16 or something like that. I don't know if that can happen this year, just because of the drain of, not even the drain of talent. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's not the same. I don't know if it's because of dilution, because there's so many teams in the ACC right now, or just the style of play, or whatever it may be. But
you got to wonder, are the bigger money programs with obviously name, image, likeness money being more important than ever. The SEC and the Big Ten have more money than everybody else. In the transfer portal era, are those rosters being supplemented to an even greater degree than ACC programs are? And you know me, I've been covering this league since the 1980s. I have nothing against the ACC, and I agree with your assessment earlier. There have been years where there was an unfairly negative narrative around ACC basketball, and the ACC proved themselves to be better than thought once March Madness rolled around. To this point, Des, obviously Duke had that great win against Arizona. I think Carolina's win over Dayton is one of the best that this league has had so far. Wake's win over Michigan was a nice win. But otherwise, man, it has not been good news. Pitt's biggest game was a loss to Wisconsin. Clemson's biggest game was a loss to Boise State. I mean, these are good ACC teams, right?
Yeah.
Louisville got whacked by Tennessee. Miami has lost big games by big margins. Virginia got crushed by Tennessee and St. John's. And that list goes on. And you know the deal. If you lose the overwhelming majority of these intersectional non-conference games early, that's going to be a part of a fair negative narrative about, what is the depth of the ACC after Duke and Carolina. When you lose that many of these big games, as they have so far, there's a little time to change this, including with the ACC SEC challenge coming up. But unless these results start going the ACC's way, there's not going to be any claims about some kind of conspiracy theory. It's going to be, look at the results.
Yep.
And after, again, accepting Duke and Carolina, I still believe there's several other NCAA caliber teams in the ACC. But when you're an 18-member league, you need more than 4 or 5 NCAA tournament teams because you're spreading the money out among a lot more mouths to feed.
Man, so it's a strange position for me. I have to sit here and root for Duke in order for the league to look good tonight. But Duke taking on number 1 ranked Kansas tonight. A doubleheader on ESPN. If you're a college basketball, if you're an ACC fan, tonight's the night. It's feast week again. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But tonight, 9 o'clock, Duke taking on number 1 ranked Kansas. Duke is ranked 11th in the country right now in the latest AP poll. We're immediately following that out to Maui in Hawaii for the Maui Invitational semifinal. North Carolina, 12th ranked North Carolina, taking on 4th ranked Auburn. So if you want to see some great basketball action tonight, it is here for you. We've got it for you tomorrow. We're still in the middle of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association state football playoffs. Mark Pruitt will join me from the Winston-Salem Journal. We'll get Mark's big 3, the 3 biggest playoff games going on in the area. We'll have probably 2 of those, if I'm not mistaken. East Forsyth, undefeated East Forsyth taking on Mooresville, and Grimsley taking on I cannot remember who they're taking on. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but Grimsley's the number 1 seed, so it may not matter. So they're playing at Jameson Stadium in Greensboro as well. We'll have all that for you on Wednesday at 12:30 live here. If you're trying to find me on Facebook, I was just telling my guy Jonathan Stewart, we did Believe in Panthers earlier before I get you out, Dave. Facebook has permanently banned me from the platform because I shared my own content. And I want people to understand what has happened here, especially content creators like yourself. Be weary of Facebook because it's run by bots, basically. It's not really run by humans. I shared a high school football graphic promoting the playoff game that we were doing this past Friday night. Normally, I don't share it to Facebook. I'll put it on Instagram and Twitter and every place else. But for whatever reason, I hadn't been putting them on Facebook. And for whatever reason, I put it on Facebook. And either the music that was underneath it or whatever it was triggered some kind of red flag. And immediately they were like, we need to review your account. As it stands, it looks as if you're not even on Facebook at this point. We've pulled everything off or whatever. So we need you to type in blah, blah, blah. We'll review it. We'll get you a decision. So I'm like, okay, I'll go in and I'll tell them this is mine. The graphics are mine. The logos are mine. All this is mine. Like, there's no reason to block it. I go do my football game. And I wake up the next morning, Saturday, to an email from Facebook at 3:35 in the morning, basically saying they've made the decision. I'm permanently banned. Basically, get out of the club. Like, get out of here. You ain't supposed to be in here. So I've lost access to business pages. I've lost access to where you might have normally seen these videos on Facebook. So we have decided to make a pivot and move more into other places where I probably should have been anywhere, like TikTok. And this is on Twitch right now for the first time this week. We're on Twitch today. The YouTube channel, of course, will become our main component to get to this content. And you can find us there. You'll find clips and stuff on Threads. You'll find them on, actually, I opened a Blue Sky account this week, and I'm trying to get my friends to go over there with us. It's kind of an alternative to Twitter. You can find me there at DEZ_3505 at bsky.social. And there's a lot of sports personalities over there right now. Matter of fact, they're kind of trying to blow that up. So definitely check out Blue Sky. But I wanted to put that out there for people who are trying to find me on Facebook, and there's just like no trace of me. That's what's happened. Facebook, the gods at Facebook decided I'm no longer allowed to be in the Facebook club, and until they make a decision or reverse or whatever, you can find me in other spots here. So find DG on X at the David Glenn Show, excuse me, and go follow the North Carolina Sports Network. Congratulations to you guys. I saw the graphic that you guys crossed over 10,000 subscribers in like 6 months or something nuts.
We're closing in on 30,000.
Holy crap.
YouTube subscribers. It's kind of crazy because we've only been at it for about a year. So in the spirit of Thanksgiving, as I thank you for the invitation, as always, Deds. I am thankful for our relationship, so keep up the good work. Best wishes with your Facebook journey. It's always good to be with you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your loved ones.
Same to you, brother. Appreciate you coming through. I love the fact that as the industry has changed kind of right underneath our feet in terms of we've watched layoffs, we've been witness and part of companies cutting talent and things of that sort. And I love the fact that a lot of us, myself, you, Joe Giglio and Joe Ovius and Raleigh, we're all starting to kind of carve these individual paths out where we kind of control where our brands go. And these companies are having to come back to us to work with us and collaborate with us, as opposed to us working for them as employees. And I just appreciate you and everybody else that's doing all this, because we all collab with each other. Like, that's the cool part about it, that I might pop up over there, or they might pop up over here, or wherever it might be, but we're all sharing the same content. And I think the people in North Carolina in particular are very appreciative of it, because local news really started to filter out. Like, there's not a lot of places you can go to get this kind of stuff now. So love the stuff you guys are doing. Definitely keep up the great work. I need to take like a class or something with you guys to figure out how you got so many so many followers so fast. But that is nuts. I love it. I love it. I love it. DG will be back in 2 weeks, and who knows? We'll probably have more coaches firings and stuff by that point, because we'll be out of the regular season, and we'll have more to discuss there regarding that. Again, keep up with the doubleheader tonight on ESPN. It's Duke versus Kansas at 9, and North Carolina taking on Auburn at 11. So for DG, this is Desmond Johnson. You've been watching the Desmond Johnson Show. We'll see you tomorrow at 12:30 live.